Season one of Pluribus just wrapped up a few days before us recording this show, and everybody who watched it felt something, has something to say, and the four of us have so much to say that we decided this should be the first episode on the new channel, this new channel, The Cultural Review. We're going to talk about the storytelling and structure of the show, the characters, and the ideas. And yeah, let's begin with the storytelling. And my name is Razi Ginzberg. I'm joined by Iyar, Alejandro, and Luke. Luke, I'm going to go to you first with your thoughts on what is it about the storytelling that captured. And I have to say, when we came up with this, one of the things that I saw was you posting on Facebook just a question, who's watching Pluribus, and a whole conversation immediately sparked with many people saying, "I'm watching it, but I don't like it." And that kind of was, I think, what some of us even here maybe felt, at least throughout some of the season. So, yeah, your thoughts.
Oh, so Pluribus, it's a show that I think maybe for me the most intriguing show of the year. By far my favorite show of the year, as I've written about, is Andor. And but Pluribus is the one that I feel like is the most unique, most innovative, most thought-provoking show. I don't love it. I don't love this show. And at times I found it a little bit hard to watch. The main characters rub me the wrong way a little bit. But in the end, it has pulled out some ideas, some directions in the story that I found kind of intriguing. Like you mentioned, there's like a whole conversation of discussion about how whether or not this is an enjoyable show to watch, and in some parts it does come across as really slow going. And I actually really enjoy that kind of storytelling. It's a this demonstrating kind of processes, people doing things, one person traveling from one side of the country to another continent to another country, and the whole way that that happens, or just how just yeah, doing like putting on a burial, like digging up the dirt, and there's like half a show dedicated to making a gravesite. And all this process is something that I find really intriguing because it's kind of telling you about the character. You're invited to kind of take a look to try to figure out what are they doing and why are they doing it? And then the questions of why they're doing it becomes apparent as you're engrossed in the story of being kind of like a scientist observer watching not nature unfold like a nature documentary, what are these animals doing, but watching characters driven by fundamental psychological and sometimes philosophical premises. And it builds up. Yeah, there's so many stories out there I can kind of predict. I've been watching the Stranger Things stuff. I've been watching Severance, all these shows, Task, and I can kind of anticipate where this is going to go. Okay, oh, we're going to look back and see something about the character's deep past to get the secret unlocked. No, this story kind of pushes forward as you're wondering. I'm familiar with this story. It's like yeah, it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's everybody's it's the Stepford Wives. It's everybody's kind of now part of the happy colony, and are you going to join or not? And and then it subverts your expectations, and you're like, wait, what? The the colonizers are offering something that's impossible to resist. It's like pure happiness. And wait, how is she gonna like fight that off? And everybody else is like on their side that hasn't joined yet. And so I have been really swept up by the unexpected, by the process of discovering where the story goes and then having it make sense as I look back retrospectively. It's like, wow, this is, yeah, I can see why it went there. So it's a propulsive story for me rather than a slow going one because I I don't know what's coming and it makes sense when it happens.
Alejandro, the part about it being slow in this Facebook conversation that Luke started. I think the only comment I made was responding to somebody, and I said, the moment I realized I liked this show was episode 7, which um as far as I can remember, is the slowest of all episodes. It starts with like 8 minutes or so of not a word being spoken. And, my worry if somebody tells me about something like that and I haven't watched it is that this is, the writers may be trying to do something different just to be different. But to me, it really made sense. And I loved the slowness because of how it played out and how it really belonged in the story.
Well, to be honest, I have mixed feelings about that, and it's a style that, I mean, the writer and I think director of the series is the same writer and director as in Breaking Bad. And one of the things that I didn't enjoy about Breaking Bad is that scenes took a long time, and I think it's the style that they have here. At the same time, I don't think that they're just doing it for its sake. They want to show you a specific thing. They want to, in the case of episode 7, they're trying to show you um, what basically the premise of the whole series is. Imagine that this alien invasion came by, and there's nobody there to really help you unless you ask for help. I won't delve that much into spoilers on why there's no help at the moment of episode 7, but you have to. I think it's a good idea, a good strategy to just try to show the spectator on what the feeling of that would be. Um, how would you feel? What would you do if you were literally alone in the world? And despite having all the wealth that has been left over, literally you don't have a way to enjoy it or to do anything with that. I think that's a good premise. And again, we're talking about the first season, which is, I think, very promising. As well as look, I'm not having a full enjoyment experience with it, but I think as as an idea, as a concept, is quite interesting because a story it's like a lemon. You have to, if you're a good writer, if you're a person who really has an idea to tell you, he's going to squeeze the lemon up until to the end. And I think there are some ideas that are still left to be squeezed, but if not, the series would have finished. But um, I think so far they have explored some concepts which I think nobody else has. Um, and we will talk about the characters later, but I think one of the parts of the story is the contrast between the people who weren't part of the alien invasion, which are essentially simply unlikable, unhappy, on really angry all the time, and then you see the aliens, which are essentially like this kind of happy, ethereal, super enjoying all the time kind of entity, which I think is one of the key and most interesting parts of the series.
Yeah, the reason we're doing this right now is you texted me a few days ago saying, let's do an episode for every episode. And I still think I don't know if we can resist the urge to do that. That might still happen. But to Alejandro's point about it explores kind of ideas that nobody else had, certainly not in this medium, and in this way. I think that's part of what attracts people enough to keep watching it, and also introduces kind of this struggle for people of, do I actually like it, or am I just watching it because I need to see what's really going on here.
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to add to Alejandro and say I'm a big fan of Vince Gilligan. He's the creator of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and now Pluribus. And Breaking Bad was a classic story of basically a hero becoming an anti-hero, and was revolving around that. And this new show, Pluribus, is a completely different show from the all the classic show we see. It's on a completely new concept. While most of the shows are basically about a hero in an ordinary society, over here it's about an ordinary women in the exact opposite of an ordinary society. What happens to the remaining individuals in a completely disastrous metaphysical change in humanity? So it's very interesting. So if you look at aesthetics, so yeah, the shots and the angles and the storytelling, it's all very good. I like to watch it. It always feels like a work of art. Every scene has great composition, and the way, the order of things, how they're exposed and how they're shown, and what is focused on is very meticulously planned. So I think it's a good show. It's a very slow show, and the fact that there are so little individuals makes it harder to create interest. At least for me, because I like to see a hero engaging with other people mostly, which we see some of in the later episode, but it's mostly a hero engaging with that creature. And I think at this stage we should define terms a little bit, because we're going to talk about a lot of weird phenomenon. So I would call like what used to be a man and is now ruled by the creature. How should we address such entity? Should we call it a slave? Should we call it controlled? Should we call it a was man? I don't know. But in Hebrew, I use, when I refer to it, I use the word nishlat, but I don't think there is a proper word in English for that. It's mostly ruled. So the way mostly Carol is interacting with the ruled is interesting, because it teaches you more about Carol rather than the ruled ones. And I really liked the story of Manussus. And obviously, you know, when you look at storytelling and the plot, so obviously the start has to be rough and he has to reject her and be in this area that, because of his resentment to the creature, he's very closed and he's not cooperating, and he don't know he can learn. And later on there is the interaction with Carol that I really like, the rough beginning, and then eventually them I don't know how much spoilers I can give, but eventually they are joining. So I don't think
Well, you can definitely give spoilers, but let's talk about the characters in just in general, and let's because there aren't that many, let's talk one by one, and let's start with Carol. And I have to say, for me, you know, when I struggle with whether or not I like the show, I'm wondering, is it because I have an issue with the storytelling, or is it just because I really dislike Carol? And I do, and I think that's part of it. I mean, she hates her own life. She hates her work. She hates the people who admire her work. She writes books that she herself doesn't like, and she's just released part four of a trilogy, which I love.
Yeah.
It says something. Um, and yeah, we have to deal, the others, however they're called, they every time they have to deal with her, they go into this spasm, and millions of them die. And I kind of get it, even as somebody who doesn't have that virus. So, Luke, your thoughts on Carol?
But she does love a few things. She loves Helen. And she loves the sound, the loneliest sound in the world, the train whistle. And she loves when there is authenticity. And so there are certain things about Carol that I think, oh my gosh, she's such a curmudgeon. One of my favorite characters in TV is Ted Lasso. I don't know if any of you have seen Ted Lasso, but Ted Lasso is like the opposite of Carol. Ted Lasso is building community, and Carol is disrupting community, is breaking things apart. And the thing that at the moment that I started to feel real sympathy for Carol and to kind of understand her is when she she told Zosha, her handler, her chaperone of the Wii, about Freedom Falls, about being sent to a gay conversion camp by her mom in Covington, Tennessee, and how awful that was to see all these people that were telling her, "Don't be yourself, smile, and you can be happier." And for her, for this homosexual lady to um to have lived a life where she has been ostracized and been told to assimilate, to now face this benevolent assimilation, I felt like, okay, this is repeating for her, and I appreciated more her defiance. She There are some things that are pretty, yeah, that rubbed me the wrong way. I mentioned before, like the fact that she's like, "Hey, I don't like what I'm writing. I don't like the people I'm writing for. But you know what? Let me make sure my books are the top shelf, and let me find out if my book has made it in the top 10 of the New York Times bestseller list." She's trying to take advantage of those people that are there, and I think we do see her doing that. Hey, I want my Gatorade really chilled. This is not really chilled. And she has a little bit of like, let me make use of other people about her, but she also has a quality that I think in the end is a thing that makes her realize my individuality, my agency, my independence is what matters most to me.
So, Alejandro, I agree with what Luc is saying. The problem is we saw her being that kind of person even before, the virus kicked in. So, but yeah, there's redeeming factors there in her personality. She did also lose, her wife at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with all that. I like that she has character. Like she's not like the other few survivors that are left, which some of them are like easygoing, and another one is like a real scoundrel, just wants to make the most of it. Uh, Not Manusas. Manusas is more or less like a parallel character to Carol. At the same time, again, we're just watching the first season, and a good story will make the characters develop. And I mentioned previously that you have the contrast with the happy pluribus or the others, however you want to call them, against Manusos or Carol. And I think one of the interesting things that we would see in the next seasons would be um, Carol developing her character as the series goes by. A way that this thing is usually framed is what the characters want versus what the characters need. And I think in this context, what I think Carol thinks that she needs to be freed from the pluribus, or to have or for people to return to normality, at least in some parts of the episodes. But does she really need that? And I think one of the needs is hinted, as you said, Razi, at the beginning. Like she needs to be more authentic with her productive life. We also see that there were some um, secrets between her and her wife that were never told. So I think the story will develop upon that. If they're really good at grappling um, the way that the story is advancing with her personal development, I think it will become a really good series. So that's what I have to say about Carol and Manusas. We see him. It's a more obscure character. We only see him, especially by his activities. We don't know very well what he. Oh, okay. You want to talk
Yeah, we're
about him
gonna
later?
get to
Okay, okay.
Manusas.
Let, okay.
But I do want to get, yeah, your thoughts on on Carol, yeah, her character, and do you think there's, those redeeming factors kind of let her off the hook for the kind of person she is and for some of the choices she makes later on in the series?
Well, I see Carol as a person who tries to have integrity, but has some deep contradictions that prevent her from living the way she wants to live. And I think that's her tragedy. That's the tragedy of Carol, the that breach of integrity that she deals with her whole life. Um, and yes, and there is what Luke told about how she is this different kind of person. She has her individuality in many shapes and forms, and others are trying to rid her of what makes her her. So it's two of those things. Now I want to add on Alejandro, the ruled, there used to be people are not happy. It's impossible for them to be happy in their state. They're not alive. It's like zombie. It's like a brain being used by a creature to take away its senses and send him order. So such creature cannot metaphysically be happy. Now regarding, I want to talk about Carol's journey as a character and the philosophical journey. So the show starts with the disaster, and after we learn about her in general, the show starts with disaster and shock. So of course the first episode is just grabbing the pieces and trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Then she basically says, she figures out very quickly, I'm going to fight this. I want to save the world. This is not acceptable. There is no way I want to live in such world. I want to turn things back to normal. And she gathers everyone around and she tells them that, and all of the rest of the survivors are like, fuck off. They're cool with this collectivist hive mind, whatever that is. They don't mind it. They want to find, each one to find his own way to have fun with the situation, whether it's having them play your loved ones or just falling completely into polite hedonism, or which is, who I'm talking about, and later on just trying to role play a happy life, which is completely cringe. And she's like, and that's the sad part. So first of all, when they said on the Air Force One, I felt it's like I would say that's relatable. Like I felt like, yes, this is me trying to tell people about individualism and about like, don't be a collectivist asshole. And people are like, yeah, whatever. I was talking to my friends about the show, and my friend of mine says, his colleague at work says, oh well, yeah, a hive mind would be way better efficient way to live in a society. Like people legit say that. And so I was happy that Carol was fighting them and resisting, but I was sad that she knew this is evil, but she had no profound, explicit, articulated way to talk about it, let alone to understand it explicitly. So she don't know why it's evil. She don't really knows why, but she knows, but she can't bring it up to a clear, conceptual, precise level, unfortunately. So all she says, it's you know the movie and you know how it ends. Like this is we're going to catastrophe, but she cannot explain why, and that's sad. She has a philosophical journey to go. And then later on we move on, we see her like struggle with like how this hive mind works and with independence, and she don't want them to serve them. So and once again she has this breach of integrity. Unlike Manussos, she wants them to have her as Sprouts, because her independence is that she's able to go to Sprouts and get her products. So she says, okay, I'll go to Sprouts, and then it's like I'm disconnected from you. Like you'll refill everything and you'll set everything up and you'll make it work, but I'll go and get stuff from them as if I'm being independent. For me, it's like a weird compromise. If I were instead of Carol, I would be like, yes, you serve me and I'll fight you. Like there is no more property. These people are gone. If they'll come back, so property might be relevant again. But as long as they are gone, I'm going to use every resource I have to bring shit back to normal, and I'm going to use you, wicked, evil monster, to help me defeat you, because that's the best thing to do right now. And I'm going to move on with the journey. So the really sad part is the episode when both heroes and I'm going to mix with Manussos because I cannot. Both Carol and Manussos collapse in the episode where Manussos goes through the jungle and Carol plays mini golf and loses her mind. So, no, she plays golf to a window of a skyscraper or whatever. So Carol falls mentally. She collapses mentally. She cannot handle it anymore. She's sad. She's lonely. She's frustrated. She feels deep impotence and frustration. And she misses Zosha. She misses like a necrophile. Like she misses the body of Zosha. She knows it's a she denies Zosha is a part of the hive mind in a sense that she misses her. So she collapses mentally and asks for the creature to come back. And Manosas is strong mentally. He wants to save the world. He's non-compromising. He's not gonna interact with them in any way whatsoever. But he collapses physically. He is injured, and they are saving him. So both characters are falling back to the hands of the monster. And the last thing I want to say is that I'm really sad that what eventually led to her getting back on her feet and wanting to come back and save the world is her understanding that she has no time. She thought to herself, well, I have time, I'll hang out with Zosha. And then she learned that Zosha loves her as much as Zosha loves an ant, because that's the collectivist hive mind. Yet what eventually makes her completely, break back into trying to save the world is understanding like the hive minds basically telling her, we're going to get you and it's going to be soon. So this is when she says, okay, I'm going to team up with Manussos and try to save the world again.
Yeah, and that's where the others are, on the one hand like zombies, on the other hand evil geniuses who knew to send to Carol somebody who looks like her her hero in her books, but a female version because they knew she had a male version because it's going to appeal to a wider audience, but that's not really what she had in mind. And yeah, it does break her because as Iyar mentioned, yeah, she was not strong mentally. She's who was it that said she has sort of contradictions, and the thing is, Manussos, the next character we're going to talk about, doesn't. He doesn't have those contradictions. As far as I can tell, he's morally perfect to the point that he leaves money on cars where he siphons gas from because he believes that he's going to save mankind, and then the actual owners of the cars are going to come back, which is beautiful. Luke.
Razi, I want to add something. If I were Manussos, I would have sit down with Carol and I would have called Zosha or whomever, it doesn't matter. I would call a random person, but I would probably call Zosha because I've realized that she has some connection to this particular body, and ask Zosha, the hive mind, well, how do you like Carol's book? And they would say, oh, it's amazing, because every goddamn thing is amazing to them. So they would say, oh, it's amazing. And then I'd ask the hive mind, and how do you like Mein Kampf? And they say, oh, it's also amazing. And then I would ask, what do you like better? I would say, no, we like both equally. And then I would look Carol in the eyes, and I assume she would understand, because that's all you need to do. And he did it in a certain indirect way, talking about them creating a moral equality between a man and an ant, which is a scene that I just loved because it was perfect. But I really think that Carol is evading. She is lying to herself because she could have known better. But listen, it's a rough situation. Everyone she loves died, basically. So cut her some slack, I guess.
Yeah, Luke, I also think the line about the ants is the best line in the show so far, at least my favorite. I'm trying. Yeah, I think she says, this might not be verbatim, but she says something like, they're not evil. They wouldn't even hurt an ant. And he says, is it not evil to value an ant as much as a man?
Okay, so before I get into Manussos, first of all, yeah, that's a very intriguing question about whether or not the hive mind would say that they love Mein Kampf. I think that I want to think about that more, but I'll put that aside because in some ways I may think that they don't, but we'll put that aside for a moment.
They would give Hitler an atom bomb if he would ask for them, and they say they love him just as much as they love Carl. Would you agree on that?
I'm not sure I would, but maybe we'll save that for when we talk about the ideas of the show. Another one more point in the presentation of the characters of the we, especially. I think this is important to really understand in order to understand Carol and then Manussos as well, and the conflict between Carol and Manussos that culminates the season. There are so many of these movies that make it really unappealing to be part of the collective. Ayn Rand wrote Anthem, and you don't want to be part of the people that say we. They have terrors in the night, and their civilization goes going backwards, and it's horrific. You don't want to be a part of them. But in this show, the we are not the Borg, are not, I've come to assimilate you. And no, you want to be part of them because what they promise is pure happiness. It made me think of like in the Odyssey where Odysseus comes to the island of the lotus eaters, where everybody, eats these lotus flowers and they have these beautiful thoughts and they forget about everything else and they just want to stay there forever. And that's what the we are promising. They're promising a kind of transcendental happiness that you can have. And Carol, and I think this is why she is the hero of the story, does not want happiness. At the end, when she has that like vacation where she chooses to be with Zosha at the end, and she's like, I'm feeling really good, but I don't trust it. And I think that's the element of her character. She's some that creates her antipathy towards the we. She distrusts happiness. She is not somebody who wants to be happy. Now, she starts to kind of bond with the we. And I think a key scene for me, and this is where it flips, is when she starts to ask Zosha about what her favorite food is, the mango ice cream story. And at that moment, she's kind of trying to train Zosha to see her individuality, because one of the things that she realizes is that each individual of the hive mind feels they know everything, but they all feel individually. So she's trying to extract the individual Zosha. She's still fighting them at this point. She's not giving in, but she's still fighting them, but she's trying to soft sell the fight. She wants to say, all right, why don't you just say I instead of we? Can we try that? And she is trying to bring Zosha out and falling more and more in love with her. And it's right at the end of that story that it's announced that Manussos is arriving, and that the clash now between somebody who is hardline opposed to the evil of the we, who has not tempted at all by the thought of any kind of happiness that they might provide, absolute principle, with Carol, who has undergone the trauma of losing the person who loves her, whom she loves most in the world, her support in the world, to being abandoned, and realizing she does need human connection. She does need it, and the only place that she can find it is in Zosha, because all the other humans that are not part of the we, they've abandoned her too. So she's isolated, away completely from anybody that wants anything to do with her. And here comes Zosha back. Now it is a delusion, but at the same time she's accepting the delusion, but also trying to fight against it, not to use it as a means of trying to save Zosha from the we, of extracting her from it. And then you come to Manussos, who wants nothing at all to do. My mom is a bitch. You can't make my mom seem nice to me and make me want to be with you guys. No. I have even more immunity to happiness. I have been living as a loner all my life. Now, we don't get much about Manussos, but it seems like the primary relationship he has is with his religion, with the Virgin Mary. And the fact that and this is where Christianity's individuality and their philosophy kind of comes in. Like, everybody has their own individual soul, and everybody's soul has been extracted from them when the we has arrived, and that is evil. And so he has, I think, more of a barrier, and we don't get much about his background or anything, but I think we get the impression he has more of a defense against happiness than Carol does. Carol had some tastes of it. She had that George O'Keeffe painting that made her think of her bond with her beloved that's now lost, and she needs that. She does need some happiness. So Manusos, oh, that everybody's harping on episode 7. That's when I fell in love with the show. Well, I can't say I've fallen in love with it because I haven't said I haven't loved it, but that juxtaposition of two journeys, one persevering. I am Manusos and I am not one of them and I'm here to save humanity. Keeps repeating to himself as he's going through the Darien Gap jungle versus Carol, who's degenerating after 40 days of isolation, finally giving into wanting to have some kind of human contact, whatever form that may be, even if it's the monsters, the we, though they still present themselves as offering some lotus flowers for her to eat, which are so delicious. And then she tries to think, you know what, maybe I can get the lotus eaters to become humans again. All right, so
I just want to add. I just want to add something that
I'm gonna go to Alejandro and then I'll go to you. But Alejandro, on this point, it could be that Manusos. So this idea of pure happiness, uh, of course, is not happiness at all. And perhaps Manusos has more of an understanding or stronger ability to resist it than Carol. I mean, he definitely does because he does resist it, whereas Carol eventually gives in until she realizes she's running out of time.
Um, so I'm still struggling to know who Manassas is. Like, we know that he is relentless, he will not stop, and he really doesn't trust the hive. What I think it's interesting, and actually, you like the comments on the ants. It makes me think, like, probably, and the neither Carol nor Manusos is really understanding the new entity that the hive is, and I don't think it's evil. I don't think it's in the way that it's put, that it's framed. I don't think they see themselves as evil, and they aren't evil as such. It's a new entity. It's a new thing, at least in the way that it's framed. And I think that um, impossibility of grappling with that is very difficult. That doesn't mean that it's a threat. It's a threat to yourself as an individual. If the hive catches you, it's your demise. You're no longer you. But that doesn't mean that that entity is wrong metaphysically or it's Stalin reborn. It's another thing, and I think um, neither of the characters is really knowing what that means and what that entails. Um, and hopefully in the new seasons you will see a bit more of that. Um, and with that we will maybe see a bit further into Manuso's aims and goals, because I mentioned the ideas of need against what they want, and here I'm I'm convinced that, I mean, it's very clear what Manusos wants. He wants to save the world. He wants to return people to what they were. But what does he need? I'm not sure about that. Certainly, Luke um, alluded that he wants some real people, some people that some company of like a real company. Aside of that, I don't know if you know a bit more or you have further insights, but I think it's one of the things that will be developed in the future seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I first of all I want to say to Luke that Carol being intimate with Zosha is another sign of her being in self-denial. Because if she would have think about it for 2 seconds, she would understand that her being with Zosha means her being with entire of the human race that has been abducted, including Helen and including goddamn children. Because we know there are children in this world. There are some unaffected children. So either these like or else like all the other children died and this virus killed all the children in the world besides the non-infected, or they're a part of the consciousness that Carol was being intimate with. So that's another thing to consider. Now, to Alejandro, I want to say that this creature is in human style. This creature is evil. This is an organism that has, in a sense, adopted a self-destroying nature. This creature itself has admitted that it will be not possible for it to last over several years because it is not self-sustaining. It picks up whatever resource it can pick up until a certain point when there will be nothing to pick up, and eventually it resorts to cannibalism, which I'll address, and I'll actually address it now. So basically, I think what this show did is that, like, if you look at Karl Marx, he basically says, in a sense, after the class war will end and the workers will win, there will be a mystical phenomenon of a unification of the collective into one. And Marx doesn't really describe it in concrete terms. Of course, he doesn't. This is an impossible fantasy. But this is the fantasy of the collectivists. Like, we will be one, and we will be happy, and we will be pacifist, and everybody will coexist. So this is metaphysically impossible. And I like what Vince Gilligan does in this show. He's an artist. I'm gonna create a reality where this is metaphysically possible. And even in such reality, where there is a hive mind, this hive mind is a poor, self-destroying, cannibalistic creature that's gonna disappear. And in this fantasy, basically, there is no individuals, there is no happiness, there is no experience. You basically all are slaves of the unknown, of the arbitrary, of whatever is forcing you to act the way you are. So I think this is just beautiful. I was writing to my friends, like in the episode where we found out about the cannibalism. I said, this is beautiful that even the perfect, you change the rules of nature to make collectivism work, and it's still a dead, cannibalized society. So I think this is just beautiful. Now, regarding what Luke said about happiness, that Carol doesn't want to be happy, this makes sense, but I hope it is not true. I hope this is not true, because for me, this is a complete error of the creator of the show. Because basically, if this is true, so he says, okay, collectivism is happiness and individualism is about rejecting happiness, in a sense. And that would be a moral catastrophe, like a moral premise that is catastrophic. And it might go there. But it's just horrible. I hope the case of Carol is not willing to be happy, but not knowing how to be happy. I hope there will be a happy ending where she understands how to be happy as an individual. I really hope so. And one more thing about the morality of the hive mind. So basically, we see it throughout the show. This is classic intrinsic morality. You have a set of rules, you have a set of duties. It comes from the way things are, and you just have to follow this morality. You cannot lie regardless of whatever happens. You're just not allowed to lie, even if it means like preventing violence or preventing injustice or dealing with corruption. No, you just cannot lie. You must help every individual and supply them with atom bomb. You must release all the animals, even if it means that they will be released to a society they cannot survive in and will die. It just, it's like it's all backwards. It's all counter life, and you can say this is not human, so it has no morality. But you can definitely classify it as a bad thing, as an entity that is destructive and is harmful for every life form whatsoever. It's a self-destructive entity that will also lead to the end of humanity.
So, really, those are kind of the two main characters. I mean, so I'm gonna go around and see if any of you have anything to say about any of the other characters. But the fact that generally there is this entity, and yeah, we talk about, are they good or evil, or well, they're not because they have no free will, as far as I can tell, and that there's some sort of one will, but it doesn't really seem like that is the case, right? They can't control it. They can't
So
actually
that's what I said.
rethink
It
things and change who they are.
depends on the nature of the ruler, whether it is actually an individual in any sense, or it just like, I don't know, a statistical compilation of what used to be humans.
Yeah.
So if it has some individualistic control in a sense, so this control is evil. And if there isn't as such, so you're right, it's not evil, it is just bad, in the sense of, the rest of the individuals has to perform value judgment of this entity, and the only result will be this is very bad, not only for me as a human, but for this entity, because it is self-destructive. And that's the way to, like, you can, if there is let's say there are animals, so you compare a cat to a parasite, none of them is evil, but a parasite is a bad creature, and a cat has some value in it, in when you judge it as a human. But also a parasite is also, like, in itself is bad, because if all creatures were parasital, the more parasites there are, the more likely it is that it will be basically the end of life. So
Luke,
you can judge this creature.
Luke, any thoughts on on the others?
Yeah, there's one other character that kind of interests me, and I think helps to answer the question about the the role of happiness, and that's Diabate. The I like that phrase, the polite hedonist, and he takes advantage of it. And there's one particular scene where he he has everybody, although we perform a James Bond movie scenario where he's the hero, he's James Bond, and it's clear and it's obvious that this is all a farce and a fake. And as soon as he leaves the room, we see them, like, revert back to their weeness and stop performing for him. And he seems very knowledgeable. He communicates with the we, talks them, he has a relationship with them, so he knows that this is all kind of that they're putting on a performance for him, and he is happy with that. He's happy with that, and he seems contented. And I was thinking, the story for me that really gets into the ideas of happiness and independence and individuality and happiness is The Fountainhead. And one particular scene in The Fountainhead that makes me think of Diabate, but the opposite of Diabate is Peter Keating raising his glass when he's being celebrated and realizing there's no champagne in it, and realizing that all his success has been hollow, that all this is not really resonating in his soul. And Diabate has no such issue. And I don't think that the show is going to say that happiness is connected to being independent, to being individualistic, to having an individual soul. It there's the conversation between Zosha and Carol towards the end, when Carol's like, I feel so good. I feel so good right now. And she asks Zosha, what makes me feel so good? I mean, what chemically? And Zosha goes on to describe everything, all the chemicals that are making that, and Carol is feeling it right now. So there's this sense that, yes, you are provided happiness. Diabate is provided happiness. I think the Peruvian girl who decides to join the we, she wants the kind of happiness that's described, because they all have all asked the we, what is it like to be part of the we? And except for Carol, she didn't, and Manusos didn't, of course, but they have all asked that, and they've been intrigued. And in Zosha's final conversation with Carol, where Zosha is saying, that feeling that you're having now, it gets so much better from here once you've joined us. So that there is this clash. Okay, you can have this happiness. And I think that this is what happiness is in this world. It's the chemical joy of going on vacations, of living in the postcard. it's that versus you resist, you hold on to your agency, you hold on to your individuality, you hold on to your independence. And so I think that this show is setting up, and Diabate is an example of this. He's no Peter Keating. It's setting up a clash between happiness versus independence.
I want to
Yeah,
add.
I want to go to Alejandro next. Alejandro, yeah, in with the Abate, it's kind of like, Carol, yeah, she lies to herself and struggles with a lie. He doesn't. He gets away with it with himself.
Um, yeah, and it's difficult not to have the temptation out of context. Like, imagine that you have whole world to yourself. Um, wouldn't you be tempted to get G5, fly to Paris, have the Eiffel Tower all for yourself, whatever, like go to the best restaurant in the world, go to the best museum, open it only for yourself? I think that's really tempting. At the same time, I think it's tempting just out of context because, I mean, maybe you could enjoy what it exists already, but just, I mean, what the Abate is doing is essentially just completely dishonest. But at the same time, like, you can understand the if you were handled such a power, wouldn't you use it? And as Luke is trying to framing is trying to frame this is well, maybe as the show advances, maybe there will be conflicts within the characters. Are they really going to enjoy it? What does it mean to be an individual? What does it mean to be uh to really enjoy things, to be really happy?
Yeah, by the way, I would not choose Air Force One, and I would definitely not stay at the Westgate. Are you kidding me? Anyway, yeah,
Westgate.
I think the polite hedonist is unhappy, and the reason is that he knows that none of this is real, in a sense that he did not achieve any of what is given to him. The scenes he creates, he knows it's fake, and it was very clear in the sort of Casino Royale scene he made when he had to remind the actor to act angry, like he knows what's going on, and besides the cringe that it's like, ugh, you create all those scenes because you have nothing. It's just like he knows. He knows basically it's about hedonism. If you, in the hedonism, even if you get it your way and you get what you want, you will be unhappy because there is no sense of achievement. There is no sense of living life properly in the sense of earning whatever you need and whatever you want. And if I were to write the show, and it might happen, I think such a character would eventually suicide or be safe, because it's very easy to get into deep depression being in such a situation. And also, I want to relate to the scene where Carol asks Zosha about happiness, and she starts describing the hormones or whatever materials it. I think it's like the view that the creature holds is some sort of deterministic materialism. Like it's all, oh yeah, happiness is just a bunch of chemicals in our brain, and this is how we understand it, and blah blah blah. And in a sense, I think Carol resists it because deep inside, she does not hold this worldview. She has a more individualistic worldview, and deep inside, she knows it is a contradiction because she experiences her own life, and she knows she has consciousness, and she knows it's not only a bunch of chemicals, because she knows herself. And once again, the hive mind could just be like a statistical connection of the knowledge of that was created by judgment of real humans, and now it's just being calculated around there in some sort of a weird unhuman entity. So it's really interesting to see where it will unfold, and I really hope the creators will take all of this potential into good fruition.
Yeah, and we were gonna talk about the ideas. I think we talked about them throughout the show, but in even generally, and again, this I think is part of why we struggle with this show. We don't know where they're gonna take this, and that's also part of the I think part of the reason why we can't stop watching. Luke.
Okay, so um, yeah, where is this going to go? I think I have an idea. Um, and it I think what we're left with a pair of Manusos and Carol, and this is oil and water. They It was so great the way I was wondering what the interaction would be. Their first interaction would be like when they got together. Oh, the two heroes of the story are now finally going to pair up and they're going to fight off the weak. No, it's not that. It's tension, distrust, a funny scene with the translator that shows how difficult communication is between individuals. It's so much easier with a we. And that kind of messiness, I think, is what the show is trying to say. You know what? Your relationship with Helen Carroll wasn't great. It's had its secrets. But it is still something. Your relationship with Manusos is going to be antagonistic sometimes. Sometimes you're going to maybe yell at each other, threaten each other, shoot shotguns at each other. But I think what the show is going to show us is that there is value in the growth of the bond that is genuine between people, and that the messiness, the unhappiness, quote unquote, is the value that matters. Because I don't know that the show is premised on the idea of uh, I, I would be very fascinating if the next season they started to explore what is happiness, and that happiness is indeed tied to an individual consciousness and the actions of the individual, that a collective emotion infused hive mind of benevolence is not where true happiness comes from, that transcendental happiness comes from the individuals making their own choices and achieving values in life, that's where it comes from. But I don't know that that's going to be the worldview of the story. I think it's going to be the clash between you get perfection, and it is perfection. It is peaceful, non-racist. It's like a liberal's dream. It's a progressive's dream to be part of this hive mind. I was listening to other podcasters, and people are writing in and saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe being part of the hive mind would not be so bad. Why is it? Why are people opposed to it?" And I think it's setting that up to say, you know what? This is this perfect life of blissful happiness is not actually what we want. I think we're kind of getting maybe, and I don't know much about Vince Gilligan, but I'm guessing he's like the 60s, the 70s. We're getting that spirit of the 60s and the 70s, distrusting the authority in charge, the cultural authority in charge, the conventional ideas in charge. And I did hear that he like came up with this idea like 10 years ago. So people, I've been thinking about this is like, hey, what if, the we is AI, or like, you know what, Carol is like in COVID times, but it comes before that. And I think it's, you know what, your idealistic scenario where everybody's blissful and happy, I don't quite trust that. I prefer my unhappiness. And I think that's where the story might be going. And that Manusos and Carol, I think, are going to be bickerers. He's what he's going to say, if what he's going to say about her homosexuality, I probably not going to like it. And then what is she going to say about his like really religiosity? He's probably not going to like it. And I think the show is going to say, guess what, we'd prefer that than a hive mind blend.
Yeah, Alejandro, I think even in the way they try to figure out what it is they're fighting against, we already saw differences, and Carol is trying to understand them by interacting with them. He is, using the shortwave radio to try to figure out what frequencies they're communicating through. And I wonder, how that's going to play out. And yeah, as Luke mentioned, are we going to see them explore the ideas we on this panel probably want them to explore of individualism versus collectivism. Is it something different? I did see somewhere Vincent Gilligan say that he's never going to use ChatGPT and he's against that. So it could be that there's some sort of anti-AI thing in there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think Luke's point was better than the one that I was trying to frame before, because I was putting some of my spoon into the series, and I certainly don't think they're going to try to explore the relationship between happiness and what does it mean to be an individual. Uh, I do think that the show is screaming for the idea of what does it mean to be an individual, what have the people who have become part of the hive have lost, and you more or less glimpsed that in the last episode when you the Manusus is trying to revive the guy. Um, I lost my track. But I think the um, yeah, I think it's not the perfect show. Certainly, it's not going to be Anthem, especially because Anthem talks about real people, and here we're talking about science fiction about an entity which essentially doesn't exist and has properties that in nature that I think would be impossible, and at the same time, which essentially it's appears to be deterministic. And I think actually one of the things that would be interesting to develop in future episodes would be what is the does this entity have any internal contradictions? Is there any infighting? Does it have any vulnerabilities? Because so far it looks uh, extremely cohesive, while at the same time I think it would be impossible to think about that. Like here you see and you think that they it behaves like as a you can be a scientist who is able to convert the DNA of all humanity without having the capacity of thinking as a human being, or having the incentives that a human being usually has to develop scientific theories or scientific products or so on. You don't see that, and that's what that's a science sci-fi kind of part of the show. It's inventing via a type of magic that this kind of entities is capable of existing. And I think what's going to be interesting is one, if it can be poked with, and two, if someone is able to get out of the hive, is this person going to be able to come back? Is it going to be willing to go back? So that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing the show.
Yeah, I agree completely with Alejandro. It's not going to be Anthem. What is it going to be? And what can we tell from what it already is in season one?
I can tell you what I want it to be and what I think it will eventually be, and I agree with Luke. I want it to be a show that will display how good individualism is, and like show the hero, the individual. But I think it will end with a message that basically collectivism is an unreachable, like I hate this message, it's not true, but basically it will say collectivism is a weird, unachievable ideal, and men and the individuals are just doomed to, like mankind is doomed to be sad as individuals. And that's wrong and sad. And by the way, we can talk for hours about the nature of this creature and what kind of metaphysical change need to be done in this world to actually make it possible. And I have plenty of questions, like what I wonder how was it like to be the first one infected? Are you an individual? Because there is no one to be connected with, so you have this command to go and infect other people. How come? So this is interesting. Also, this could be like, some sort of alien civilization building a supercomputer, and they have this virus, so people basically will inject all their knowledge to this supercomputer, and they use it to control everyone with radio signals, and those people has no consciousness anymore. It's impossible. So they're just like the supercomputer just takes away their sensory faculty, like gets what they see and send them comments what to do. So it's you can you discuss it for hours and hours because we have not enough information. It's such a different phenomenon, an interesting phenomenon to discuss.
Well, wherever it goes, we will discuss it, possibly for hours and hours, here on the Cultural Review. I hope you enjoyed the first episode ever on this channel, and many more to come. Stay tuned, and of course, subscribe. We'll see you on the next show.